I used to believe that love was about patience, about understanding and compromise. That's what I told myself every time Lorraine asked for something unreasonable, every time she made me feel like I was never doing enough. But that morning, as I sat at the breakfast table, staring at my coffee cup, I finally saw the truth. I had been a fool. The morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting a soft glow on the polished countertops. Everything looked normal, peaceful. Lorraine stood by the stove, her back to me, humming softly as she flipped eggs in the pan. She looked perfect, just like she always did, every hair in place, makeup flawless even in the early hours. But I had learned not to trust appearances. She turned, flashing me a bright smile as she set a plate in front of me. "I was thinking," she said casually, sliding into the seat across from me. "Can I borrow your credit card?" I didn't even look up. "For what?" Lorraine exhaled, twirling her fork between her fingers. "My brother needs some help. Just a little money to get back on his feet." I finally looked at her. Back on his feet from what, exactly? Her expression flickered, just for a second, before she regained her composure. "He's going through a tough time, that's all. I told him we could help." I set my coffee cup down, studying her. "Lorraine, I already helped him last time. And the time before that. When does it stop?" Her smile thinned. "He's my family, Owen. And I'm your husband. When do I matter in this equation?" The air shifted. The warmth of the morning, the illusion of peace, it was gone. Lorraine's fingers tightened around her coffee cup, and I could see the storm brewing in her eyes. I had seen this look before, but this time, I wasn't going to fold. I leaned back in my chair, waiting for the argument I knew was coming. "You're being selfish," she snapped, her voice sharp. "It's just a little money. It's not like you can't afford it." I shook my head. "It's not about the money, Lorraine. It's about the fact that every time he screws up, you expect me to clean up his mess. And I'm done." Her nostrils flared. She reached for her coffee cup so fast I barely had time to react. 1 second, she was holding it. The next, the steaming liquid was flying toward my face. Pain shot through me as the hot coffee made contact with my skin. I jerked back, knocking my chair over in the process. The burn stung, but the shock of it hit me harder. Lorraine's eyes widened as she realized what she had done. But it wasn't guilt I saw in her expression. It was something else. Annoyance? Frustration? She looked like she was waiting for me to apologize. I wiped my face with my sleeve, my heart pounding. This wasn't love. This wasn't a marriage. And suddenly, I knew I needed to find out what else she had been hiding. Because if she was willing to throw scalding coffee at me over a credit card, what else had she done behind my back? She never expected what I would do next. I stood there, coffee dripping from my face, feeling the sting of both the burn and the realization that I had been fooling myself for years. Lorraine didn't gasp in horror at what she had done. She didn't rush to my side to see if I was okay. She just stood there, gripping her now empty cup, her jaw tight, her breath uneven. For a second, I thought she might apologize, that some part of her would acknowledge how insane this was. But instead, she crossed her arms and glared at me like I was the one who had gone too far. "You made me do that," she muttered. I let out a bitter laugh, wiping my face with a napkin. The heat still clung to my skin, but the pain was already dulling. What wasn't dulling, though, was the sinking feeling in my gut. "You threw coffee at me, Lorraine," I said slowly, trying to wrap my head around it. "Over a credit card." She rolled her eyes. "It wasn't just about that. It's about how selfish you are. My brother is struggling, and you're acting like I asked for $1,000,000. "Your brother," I repeated. "The same one who borrowed $2,000 from us last year and conveniently forgot to pay it back?" "That's different," she snapped. I let out a sharp breath, gripping the edge of the table. I had known for a long time that Lorraine saw things differently than I did. She never took responsibility for anything. Every problem was always someone else's fault. But this was something else entirely. I turned away, heading toward the sink to run cold water over my face. I needed a moment to think, to process the fact that my wife had just physically lashed out at me without a second thought. Behind me, Lorraine huffed. "Oh, stop being dramatic." I felt something inside me snap. I turned off the water, grabbed a dish towel, and dried my face before spinning around to look at her. "You know what, Lorraine?" I said, my voice eerily calm. "I think I've finally figured something out." She folded her arms. "What?" I set the towel down, my hands steady now. "This marriage isn't what I thought it was." Her eyebrows lifted. "Oh, don't start. You're seriously going to act like a victim here?" I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman I had once believed I would spend my life with. The truth hit me harder than the coffee ever could. She didn't love me. Not in the way a wife should love her husband. I had spent years bending over backward to make her happy, excusing the little red flags because I thought they weren't worth ruining a marriage over. But now, standing in my own kitchen, I realized that those little red flags had been waving in my face the whole time. The way she always made me the bad guy in every argument. The way she never thanked me for the things I did for her, only pointed out what I hadn't done. The way she used my money like it was her personal allowance, never contributing a dime of her own. And now, the way she had thrown hot coffee at me because I had dared to say no. I took a deep breath, grabbing my car keys off the counter. I need to get out of here. Lorraine scoffed. Oh, so you're running away now? Classic. I ignored her. I walked straight to the door, barely hearing her muttering under her breath. My mind was racing too fast to process her words. I needed to think. I needed space. But as I walked out of the house, something in the back of my mind wouldn't let go of a nagging thought. Lorraine had been way too defensive about her brother. And suddenly, I had a terrible suspicion. What if this wasn't just about money? What if Lorraine wasn't just covering for her brother's financial problems? What if there was something else? Something bigger, that she didn't want me to find out. I had no proof. Not yet. But I was about to find out. I drove without a destination, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. The streets blurred past me as my mind replayed the morning's events over and over. She threw hot coffee at me. It wasn't just an outburst of frustration. It was something darker, something that had been building for years. I had ignored so many signs, convinced myself that things weren't as bad as they seemed. But now? Now I couldn't ignore it anymore. I pulled into the parking lot of a small diner, one of those old-school places with neon signs and booths lined with cracked leather. I needed time to think, to breathe. The moment I stepped inside, the scent of fresh coffee hit me, and I nearly laughed at the irony. A waitress greeted me with a tired smile. Just you. I nodded. She led me to a booth by the window, and I sat down, rubbing my temples. My thoughts were a tangled mess, but one thing kept pushing itself to the front of my mind. Lorraine's brother. The way she had reacted when I refused to give him money. The way she had lashed out so violently, as if I had done something unforgivable. What was she really hiding? I pulled out my phone and hesitated before typing his name into a search engine. Jake Callahan. I didn't expect much. The guy was a nobody, a leech who never held down a real job for more than a few months. But the moment I hit search, a result popped up that made my stomach drop. Jake Callahan, arrest records and legal history. I clicked on it, my pulse pounding. The page loaded, and there it was, 3 counts of fraud, 2 arrests for grand larceny, and 1 pending case for identity theft. I exhaled sharply. This wasn't just some bad luck or a tough time, like Lorraine had claimed. Jake was a criminal, and Lorraine had been covering for him. My mind raced. Did she know? Of course she knew. There was no way she didn't. But why was she protecting him so fiercely? Unless... A sickening thought hit me. What if she was involved? I shook my head. No, that was crazy. Lorraine wasn't perfect, but she wasn't a criminal, right? The doubt gnawed at me. The waitress returned, setting a cup of coffee in front of me. You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced a smile. Just a rough morning. She gave me a knowing nod before walking away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I had to find out the truth. And I knew exactly where to start. By the time I pulled back into my driveway, the sun was already starting to set. My house, the one I had worked so hard to build, felt different. Like a place I didn't belong anymore. I stepped inside, half expecting Lorraine to still be in the kitchen, waiting with some snide remark. But the house was eerily quiet. Then I heard it. A muffled voice. Coming from upstairs. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Lorraine was on the phone, and she was whispering. I moved carefully, stepping onto the carpeted stairs without making a sound. As I reached the landing, I could hear her voice more clearly. He won't give me anything. I tried. She sighed in frustration. No, I don't think he suspects. But we need to figure something out fast. I gritted my teeth. Who was she talking to? My heart pounded as I took another step forward, pressing myself against the wall, just outside the bedroom door. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. We might have to move sooner than we thought. Move? I heard the rustle of papers. Then Lorraine's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. He's not as dumb as I thought. My fingers curled into fists. I had no idea what she was planning. But one thing was clear, my wife was hiding something big. And I was going to find out what. I stood frozen outside the bedroom, my breath shallow, my heart slamming against my ribs. Lorraine's voice was low, urgent, carrying the weight of something I wasn't meant to hear. He's not as dumb as I thought. The words hit me like a freight train. The sting of the coffee she had thrown at me that morning felt like nothing compared to the betrayal tightening around my chest. I should have barged in, demanded answers. But something stopped me. I needed to know more. I needed the truth, all of it. Carefully, I stepped back, making my way downstairs, my mind racing. What was she planning? Who was she talking to? I wanted to storm back up there, grab the phone out of her hands, and force her to explain herself. But if she was already scheming behind my back, I needed to be smart. I needed proof. I grabbed my laptop from the living room and opened my bank account. My stomach twisted into knots as I clicked through the transactions. I expected to see the usual groceries, utilities, maybe some shopping here and there. But what I found made my blood run cold. Thousands of dollars, gone. Large withdrawals. Unexplained transfers. Payments to accounts I didn't recognize. And worst of all, a recent wire transfer for $15,000. To Jake Callahan. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. She had been funneling money to him right under my nose. While she accused me of being selfish, while she threw coffee at me for refusing to hand over my credit card, she had already been taking money behind my back. I leaned back in my chair, my hands gripping the sides of my head. This wasn't just a case of bad judgment. This wasn't just a wife being too generous with a freeloading brother. This was theft. My own wife was robbing me blind. A secret too big to hide. I needed to stay calm. Reacting on impulse wasn't going to help me. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I logged into our shared phone plan. A few clicks later, I pulled up Lorraine's call history. And there it was. Multiple late-night calls. Dozens of them. Some were to her brother. That much I expected. But there was another number, one that repeated itself over and over, far more frequently than Jake's. A number I didn't recognize. I grabbed my phone and copied the number into a search engine, my pulse hammering in my ears. No name. No official records. But then I tried a reverse lookup, and that's when I saw it. The number was registered to a business. A real estate agency. My blood went ice cold. She wasn't just sending Jake money. She was making plans. And if I had to guess, those plans didn't include me. The confrontation begins. I slammed my laptop shut and marched up the stairs. Enough. I wasn't going to sit quietly while my wife plotted something behind my back. As I reached our bedroom door, the conversation inside had gone quiet. I shoved it open without knocking. Lorraine was sitting on the bed, her phone still in her hand. When she saw me, her eyes widened for half a second before she forced a casual expression. "What?" she asked. I held up my phone. "Who were you talking to?" She scoffed. "Are you serious right now?" I stepped forward, my voice calm but firm. "I heard you." "I know." Her face barely twitched, but I saw it, the flicker of panic. "You're being paranoid, Owen," she said, rolling her eyes. "I was talking to my mom." I let out a sharp laugh. "Your mom?" I pulled up my call records and held the screen in front of her. "Then explain why you've been talking to a real estate agency dozens of times in the last 2 months. Her face paled. For the first time in a long time, she had no comeback. I took another step closer, lowering my voice. "You're planning to leave, aren't you?" She licked her lips, her mind racing for a response. But I wasn't done. "And not just leave," I continued, tilting my head. "You were planning to take everything with you. The $15,000 transfer. The hidden withdrawals. The real estate calls." It all made sense now. She wasn't just helping her brother. She was running. Lorraine finally found her voice, but it was weak. "You're acting insane, Owen." I shook my head, feeling a cold, bitter calm settle over me. "You can lie all you want. But I see you now." For the first time in our marriage, I saw her for what she really was. And she never expected what I would do next. Lorraine sat there, clutching her phone like a lifeline, her face pale, her mouth slightly open. I could see the gears in her head turning, scrambling for an excuse, a way out of this. But she had nothing. I had caught her. I had proof. And for the first time in years, I had the power in this relationship. She let out a forced laugh. "Owen, you're being ridiculous. A real estate agency? So what? Maybe I was looking at investment properties. You know, something for us." She was quick on her feet. I'd give her that. But not quick enough. I crossed my arms, watching her. "That's funny," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Because the account you wired $15,000 to? That wasn't for an investment property. That was your brother's account. Her face barely twitched, but I saw it. The flash of panic. I cut her off. And those cash withdrawals? The ones totaling over $30,000 in the past few months? Let me guess. Those were for groceries. She swallowed, gripping the blanket beneath her fingers. I don't have to explain myself to you. That was it. That was all she had. No denial. No carefully crafted lie. Just defiance. Because she knew. She knew I wasn't the fool she thought I was. And I wasn't done. I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped a few times, and held it up to her. This number right here? I said, pointing at the call log. The one you've been calling every single day? That's not your brother. That's not your mom. That's a damn real estate agent. So tell me, Lorraine, what were you planning? Silence. She stared at me, her lips parting like she wanted to say something. Some final excuse that might somehow smooth this over. But the truth was, there wasn't a way to fix this. She had been caught. And the worst part? She wasn't even sorry. Finally, she exhaled, her shoulders slumping slightly. Fine, she muttered. You want the truth? I raised an eyebrow. That would be nice. She threw her hands up. Yes, I was planning to leave. Happy now. A bitter laugh escaped me. Oh, I'm thrilled, Lorraine. I had suspected it. The signs had been there for months, maybe even years. But hearing her say it out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. What was the plan then? I asked, tilting my head. Were you going to clean out the accounts first? Drain me dry before disappearing? She shrugged, her expression eerily cold. I was just taking what I deserved. I blinked. What you deserved? She smirked. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to be married to you? I actually laughed. A dry, humorless chuckle. Oh, I'm sorry. Was it exhausting spending my money? Living in the house I paid for? Wearing clothes I bought you? She rolled her eyes. That's not the point. Then tell me what the point is, Lorraine. I said, my voice dangerously low. I'd love to hear it. For a split second, she hesitated. And in that moment, I knew. There was more. This wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about her brother. There was something else. I took a step forward. Who else is involved? She stiffened. What? I nodded toward her phone. You've been whispering on the phone for weeks. You're telling me it was just about real estate? Just about Jake. She glanced away. Just for a second. But that was enough. I could feel the air shift between us. I knew that look. It was the same look she gave me whenever she lied. I inhaled slowly. You're seeing someone else, aren't you? Her breath hitched. And that was all the confirmation I needed. The moment of truth. I let the silence hang between us, stretching out like a chasm. Lorraine's hands curled into fists, her jaw clenched so tightly I thought she might crack a tooth. She was waiting for me to explode, waiting for me to scream, to break something, to react. But I didn't. Instead, I took out my phone again and tapped the screen a few times. Lorraine's eyes flickered to it, and I saw the faintest trace of fear in them. What are you doing? She asked, her voice unsteady. I looked up at her, expression unreadable. Oh, just checking something. A few seconds later, I turned the screen toward her. She gasped, her entire face drained of color. Because there, on my screen, was a photo of her. A photo of her with another man. And I hadn't even had to dig deep. It had been right there, sitting in an online forum. A post someone had made about their amazing weekend with a beautiful married woman. And that woman was her. She shot up from the bed. Where did you get that? I smirked. You really think your little secret was going to stay hidden forever? Her breathing was uneven now. Owen, listen. No, I cut her off. You listen. You spent months lying to my face. Stealing from me. Using me. And now you want to act like this is all just some misunderstanding. She stepped toward me, her hands outstretched like she was trying to calm me down. Owen, please. I was going to tell you. I shook my head. No, you weren't. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because she knew I was right. She never planned to tell me. She had planned to leave me in the dust. And she had never expected me to find out first. The tables have turned. For the first time, Lorraine wasn't in control. I was. And she had no idea what I was going to do next. Lorraine stood frozen, her face drained of color, her hands still half raised like she thought she could smooth this over with the right words. But there were no words that could fix this. She had been caught. Not just lying. Not just stealing from me. But betraying me in the worst way possible. I held the phone in my hand, staring at the image of her wrapped around another man, laughing, holding his face the way she used to hold mine. My stomach twisted, but my mind was strangely clear. You really thought I wouldn't find out? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Lorraine swallowed, shaking her head. It's not what you think. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Oh, that's rich. Then tell me, what exactly am I looking at? She hesitated for just a second too long. I turned my phone around again, scrolling through the comments beneath the photo. It was a thread full of strangers discussing a wild weekend with my wife. I read one out loud. Best weekend of my life. She said she was finally free to be herself. No more ball and chain. My voice didn't even shake. But hers did. Owen, please, let's just talk about this. I looked up at her. Were you going to tell me before or after you drained my accounts and disappeared? Her mouth opened, then closed. That was all the answer I needed. The mask slips. She exhaled sharply and crossed her arms. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I was leaving. Yes, I took some money. But what did you expect, Owen? This marriage was dead years ago. I arched an eyebrow. Funny. You didn't seem to mind when you were spending my money, living in my house, using my name to get into places you had no business being. She scoffed. Oh, please. Don't act like you're some saint. You were boring, Owen. Predictable. You'd wake up, go to work, come home, eat the same dinner every night, and then act like I should worship you for keeping the lights on. I tilted my head. I'm sorry. Was financial stability not enough for you? She rolled her eyes. You don't get it. You never did. I chuckled, shaking my head. Oh, I get it now, Lorraine. Believe me. I set my phone down on the nightstand, leaning in slightly. You were never in love with me. You were in love with what I could give you. And when that wasn't enough, you went looking for more. She stiffened, but she didn't deny it. For the first time, I could see her clearly. Not as the woman I had married, not as the person I had once thought I would spend my life with, but as a user. A parasite that had latched onto me, draining me dry until there was nothing left. I had spent years making excuses for her, telling myself that the little moments of coldness, the selfishness, the dismissiveness, none of it was real. But it was. It had always been. And now that I had nothing left to give, she was ready to throw me away. The unraveling. Lorraine must have realized she wasn't winning this argument. She sighed dramatically and ran a hand through her hair. Look, there's no point in dragging this out. Let's just end it cleanly. I narrowed my eyes. Cleanly? You mean like how you tried to do behind my back? She groaned. God, Owen, you're so dramatic. It's over, okay? Just sign the papers and move on. I stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, I smiled. She frowned. What? I turned and walked over to the closet, opening the safe hidden behind a row of my old jackets. I spun the dial, entered the code, and pulled out a folder. Lorraine's entire body went rigid. What is that? She asked, her voice suddenly sharp. I turned back, flipping through the pages. This, I said casually. Oh, this is just our prenup. You remember that, don't you? Her face paled. She had forgotten. She had spent so much time planning her escape, so much time siphoning off my money, that she had completely forgotten about the contract she had signed before we got married. A contract that said if she ever cheated, she got nothing. No money. No house. No savings. Nothing. I saw the moment realization hit her. Her eyes widened. Her hands clenched at her sides. Owen, she said, her voice shaking slightly, we can talk about this. I shut the folder with a soft snap. Oh, now you want to talk? She forced a laugh, stepping toward me. Come on. This doesn't have to get ugly. We can figure something out. I stared at her. The audacity was unbelievable. She had spent months plotting against me. She had stolen my money, humiliated me, thrown coffee in my face. And now that she realized she wasn't walking away with a dime, she wanted to talk. I shook my head. No, Lorraine. We're done. Her face twisted. You can't just. Oh, but I can. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. And I will. She stared at me, her breathing uneven. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't the weak one. And she knew it. I picked up my phone again and sent a quick text. She frowned. What are you doing? I smirked. Oh, just letting my lawyer know that the divorce is moving forward. You know, the one that ensures you get nothing. Her nostrils flared. You wouldn't. I turned the phone around so she could see the screen. Message sent. Her entire body went stiff. I had just taken away everything she thought she could steal from me. And now, for the first time, she was the one panicking. She never expected me to fight back. But this was just the beginning. Lorraine stood there, frozen, her face drained of all color. I watched as she struggled to process what had just happened. She had spent months, maybe even years, crafting her escape plan, siphoning my money, plotting her future without me. And now? It was all gone. Everything she thought she would take from me had just vanished with a single text message. She clenched her jaw. You think this is funny? I tilted my head. Not funny. Just fitting. Her nostrils flared. You really think you can just ruin my life like that? I let out a short laugh. Your life? Lorraine, you did that yourself. You stole from me. You betrayed me. And now you're mad because I beat you to the punch. She took a sharp step toward me, but I didn't move. She wasn't intimidating anymore. Whatever hold she once had over me was gone. You're going to regret this, she hissed. I smirked. Oh, I don't think I will. For a long moment, we just stood there, locked in a silent war of glares. The woman I had once loved was gone, replaced by something cold and bitter, something unrecognizable. And then, just like that, her expression shifted. Her eyes softened. Her lips trembled. She forced herself to look vulnerable. Owen, she whispered, her voice cracking. We don't have to do this. We can fix this. I almost laughed. She really thought I'd fall for it. I shook my head. You don't love me, Lorraine. You never did. Tears welled in her eyes, but I could see through them. They weren't real. She wasn't sad about losing me. She was sad about losing what I gave her. For years, I had been her safety net. Her provider. The man who covered for her mistakes, who made excuses for her selfishness. But I wasn't that man anymore. You should start packing, I said, turning toward the door. Because after today, you're out. She stiffened. You can't kick me out of this house. I smiled. Actually, I can. Your name isn't on the deed. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. I could see the moment she realized how badly she had played this. She had spent all her time stealing from me, but she had never considered the one thing she needed to secure the house. She had lost. Completely. And I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. I'll give you a day, I said, walking away. After that, you're gone. She didn't say a word as I left the room. For the first time in years, I felt free. And she never expected it to end this way. Part 8. The New Beginning. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Lorraine dragging her suitcases down the stairs. I didn't get up to help. She had called everyone the night before, her friends, her brother, even her mother, begging for a place to stay. None of them offered. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she had used. She stomped past me, her chin held high, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She had nothing now. No safety net. No backup plan. No rich new lover waiting to sweep her away. Just herself. She paused at the door, gripping the handle like she was waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. She swallowed hard, then yanked the door open and stepped out. And just like that, she was gone. The aftermath. The silence in the house felt strange at first. For years, I had been trapped in Lorraine's world, always trying to keep her happy, always walking on eggshells. But now I could breathe. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding, changing passwords, canceling credit cards, fixing the damage she had done. And one day, while clearing out the last of her things, I found a letter. Not from her. From someone else. It was addressed to her. From a lawyer. And when I opened it, I nearly laughed. It was a court summons. Apparently, Lorraine's financial games had caught up with her. Someone else, maybe another man she had tried to con, was suing her for fraud. The irony was delicious. I set the letter down, exhaling deeply. This was no longer my problem. Lorraine was gone. And for the first time in years, I was free. She had spent so much time planning to destroy my life. And in the end, she had only destroyed herself.